That's what I'm going to talk about today, the resurrection life. We've heard it throughout the scriptures. You know that there is the resurrection. Jesus was resurrected from the dead. But there's also the resurrection life. And it's supposed to affect us today, right? It's supposed to affect us today. I have a bunch of verses for us today. Okay, what is it? What is the resurrected life? Well, let me start off by just saying a verse I went over last week. It was John 16:33. And Jesus says, "These things I have spoken to you so that in me you may have peace. In the world you have tribulation, but take courage, I have overcome the world." And so a lot of times, I went over this last week, a lot of times we think that peace is the absence of problems. But he puts those two things together, which in our minds, well, in my mind, I don't feel like they go together. Peace and tribulation. He's like, I want you to have peace, right? But don't worry, they're going to have tribulation too. And take courage, though, because I've overcome the world. So how do those things go together? Because in our Western mindset and what we've been fed is that this life is all there is. And so if you want peace, you have to have everything perfect in order to have peace. Well, I'll have peace when I get that check, when I get that raise. I'll have peace when this situation's over. I'll have peace when this pain is gone. I'll have peace when this relationship is mended, right? That's how we think of peace. But he's saying, no, listen, I want you to have peace, but you're going to have tribulation. But take courage, I have overcome the world. And so that overcoming the world is this victorious mindset that I guess is supposed to bring peace to us, right? What does that mean? What kind of mindset does it take to live victoriously, to reign in life? What kind of mindset does it take to walk in a manner where you defeat the enemy? That battle that's going on all around you. What does it look like, right? Well, let me tell you, the amount of peace and victory you experience is tied to the amount of trust we have in God. When things are difficult, the trust level determines our victory or our defeat. So everyone goes through bad things, difficult things, painful things, hard things. We all go through things, right? But when it gets hard is when you need that trust to kick in. Because what happens when you go through things, it's always the question. The enemy does the same thing to all of us. Where's God? We feel like he's left us. We feel like he's distant. You know, those verses that he'll never leave you or forsake you, that applies to everyone else, but I just don't feel it right now. Where is he? And this is so real. It's not like I'm being sarcastic. No, this is so real. Like, where's God right now? It's a question that we all have asked, right? And so when I was a teenager, I had a bunch of surgeries and all this stuff, and I'm like, where are you, God? I read in the Bible that you heal, and you healed, and you showed that about your nature. Where are you? We all go through stuff like this, and that's when the trust has to kick in and say, you know what? I may not see it. Just like this morning, we had sunrise service at 6:30. At 6:30, the sun rose. We didn't see the sun. We didn't feel the sun. It was cold and damp and dark. But we know somewhere the sun was risen. Right? And it could also determine our defeat. If we don't trust God, we could run to other things. And when we run to other things, it just leads down a path that can go further and further away from God. Right? Is God still working? Or has he forgotten about your situation? A better question is, where will you spend eternity? I know that doesn't seem like it fits the situation. But a better question is, where will I spend eternity? Let's get our minds focused on something with hope. Romans 6:4 and 5 It says, sharing in his death by our baptism means that we were co-buried and entombed with him, so that when the Father's glory raised Christ from the dead, we were also raised with him. That means something. That means something. We have been co-resurrected with him so that we could be empowered to walk in the freshness of new life. For since we are permanently grafted into him to experience a death like his, then we are permanently grafted into him to experience a resurrection like his and the new life that it imparts. Experiencing this resurrection life that the Bible's talking about and the joy of it is really a hope of where we're going. And so many times in our Western society, we've been fed, just day in and day out with everything that you see and watch and hear is all about this world. It's all about longevity, health, beauty, a pain-free existence, success, wealth, all these things. We're just bombarded with this mentality. And so when we approach God, sometimes we bring that mentality into this relationship and we're like, God, where are you today? And he's like, oh, no. The better question is, where are you going to be for all of eternity? See, that's where our hope is. So if you're looking for hope and joy and security and peace, it's not found here. It's not found here. Don't look here to gain that. Jesus said, I want you to have peace, but in this world you have tribulation. Those two things in our minds don't seem to go together unless we separate them and say, my peace is not going to be found in this life, in this world system. Where are we going? Our hope and value is not supposed to be in this world or in this life. And you really have to pick one. You either live for what the world has to offer, or you live for heaven. But the people that I have seen who live for heaven are the most joyful people, the most victorious people. And sometimes these things are opposite. We face things every day. When I was a graphic designer in Long Beach, I remember the boss came to me, had a meeting with him and his CPA, and said, listen, we're going to pay you, but we're going to put some of this money into a reimbursement. So it looks like you're spending a lot of money on gas, but it's just part of your paycheck so that we can save money on taxes and all that stuff. And here's the owner of the company and the CPA. I have a choice. Do I want to live for this world, or do I want to live for heaven? And I told him, no, I can't do that. I can't do that. I'm not going to lie. So you can do what you want, but I'm not going to lie. I can't partake in that. And they were a little disappointed and all this stuff, but they honored that. I didn't get fired. But sometimes that's not necessarily a drastic illustration, but sometimes they are opposite, and you have to choose one over the other. You're going to live for heaven, or are you going to live for this world, right? Do you want the blessings of this world or the blessings when you get to heaven? Romans 8, 10, and 11, Paul says, now Christ lives his life in you. And even though your body may be dead because of the effects of sin, his life-giving spirit imparts life to you because you are fully accepted by God. Yes, God raised Jesus to life, and since God's spirit of resurrection lives in you, he will also raise your dying body to life by the same spirit that breathes life into you. 2 Corinthians 4, 7 through 12 says, we are like common clay jars that carry this glorious treasure within. Do you see, are you getting the picture of the early church's perspective on their body and the physical realm? You're like common clay jars that this glorious treasure is within, so that the extraordinary overflow of power will be seen as God's, not ours. Now, if your wife ever asks you, hey, do I look beautiful? You don't say, you look like a common clay jar. And don't worry, the glorious beauty is within. No, but this was their perspective. Though we experience every kind of pressure, we're not crushed. At times, we don't know what to do, but quitting is not an option. We are persecuted by others, but God has not forsaken us. Amen. We may be knocked down, but not out. We continually share in the death of Jesus in our own bodies, so that the resurrection life of Jesus will be revealed through our humanity. We consider living to mean that we are constantly being handed over to death for Jesus' sake, so that the life of Jesus will be revealed through our humanity. So then, death is at work in us, but it releases life in you. This was a very real thing to them. Everywhere they went to share the gospel, they faced death. In fact, Paul said, if a prophet told Paul, if you keep doing this, you're going to get arrested. And he kept doing it. This was their life. And we can't forget about that. Forget about that. They did not value and live for this world. There was no emphasis on the body. Our culture emphasizes your physical body so much and values it so much. It's just your body. It's a temporary tent. Can I convince anyone today? Your body is a temporary tent. Yes. I mean, ladies, if it needs painting, go ahead, paint it. But, have a perspective that it's a temporary tent, okay? You see, everyone next week's going to come with no makeup. We've been conditioned to value the body, our beauty, and our longevity. I was reminded this week just how olive oil and wine come about. It's the crushing of the olives. It's the crushing of the grapes, right? And sometimes your biggest breakthroughs come in those seasons where you feel like you're being crushed. Where you feel like there's no way out. Where you feel like there's no answer and you can't hear God. Those are your biggest breakthroughs. When it's easy, you're not growing. Now listen, I don't pray for hard times, okay? I often tell God, I'm good. Like, I won't ask you for patience. I'll just be patient, right? I don't want any more trials than I already have. But when you find yourself in those situations, oftentimes those are your biggest breakthroughs. You're being stretched so much. It's like, guys, when you work out and you can't do any more push-ups and you do 5 more. When you do that, it actually tears the fibers of your muscles. And when your muscles tear and they heal, they get stronger. And it's like that in life with your faith. When do you go to the end of your faith? Have you ever been there? To the end, where you can't believe anymore for God to do something. You can't believe for God to rescue you anymore. Have you ever been there? It's a good thing. It's not like God's like, oh no, they have more faith. God's like, oh, I'm expanding their faith. I'm expanding it. This is the point where they come to the end of their rope and now grab hold of me. Amen. Your effectiveness as a person, as a minister, as a priest and a king increases when you're enduring hardships. In your ability to endure hardship, your effectiveness increases. When I was a kid, I used to think, I would get things that would last longer. Like I wouldn't buy things and use my money on things that would be quick, And in fact, my mom, she was very smart with money, and we did a lot with the money that we had. But once in a while, she would take us to McDonald's me and my two brothers, and we only had one fry that we could share. Okay, we could each get an item, but we had to share one fry. And it wasn't a large fry. Okay? I need some healing from... So I would get chicken nuggets because I knew I could just do one at a time and it would last me all day. And then what I did was I wouldn't eat my chicken nuggets. I'd eat the fries first. I'd get as many fries as I could get, and then I would touch the chicken nuggets later. I always had this, I wouldn't spend my money on food. I would save up for something that I knew would last, like a skateboard or something like that. Candy, I just felt, well, that'll be gone this afternoon. That's just kind of how I thought. That's how I was. But really, my perspective really changed when I was a teenager. And I was diagnosed with a tumor inside my hip bone. And I had 3 surgeries, major surgeries, on like 6 to 8-hour surgeries in 2 years, 3 big surgeries in 2 years. And I was in tons of pain, just constant pain. After 2 surgeries, they put an artificial ball in my hip joint, but tried to keep my cartilage. And after a year, it started rubbing on bone. And it was just horrible pain. And this lasted a long, long time. But what really changed my perspective was 2 things. One, when I was going into surgeries and I had to sign these waivers that said, I understand I may not wake up. And when I signed those and I was counting backwards, as they were putting me under, I got a little scared. I was like, where will I end up if I don't wake up? Where will I be if I don't wake up from this, right? And I started calling on God. The other thing was every ounce of my identity was in sports. I was very athletic. I wasn't good at school. I was very athletic. And I just dreamed of being a athletic hero in some capacity. But at that time, the doctor said, I'm sorry, but you can't do this, or this. You can't do any of this anymore. And I was like, well, who am I then? Who am I if I don't have all that? And so my identity was forged in that. My perspective was changed by facing loss and even facing death. My identity was born by having nothing. Do you understand? And my relationship with God was really solidified in pain and hopelessness as I cried out to him. That was my biggest breakthrough in life. I don't wish that on anyone, and I actually do not think that God authored that. I believe the enemy authored that tumor. But God sure used it. And I'm thankful now for what I've gone through and my perspective. And I was different than my peers at that age because I had a different, it wasn't really to my own credit. It was just what I went through. I had a different perspective. I began to think about eternity and to think of what am I living for, right? I love Psalms 34:18. It says, the Lord is close to all whose hearts are crushed by pain. So if you're going through something and your heart is being crushed by pain, you can look at this promise and say, oh, but the Lord is close. The Lord is close. And hang on to those. Sometimes you have no feelings, you have no sight, you're not hearing anything, and you have to stand on promises like this. Sight unseen, living by faith. God is close. Someone may say, how do you know? Do you hear him? No. Is he helping you in what you're going through? No. Well, how do you know he's close? I'm standing on this promise right here. Holding on. You pick a verse and you hold on to that. I love this second part. And he's always ready to restore the repentant one. 1 Peter 1:3-4 says, celebrate with praises that the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, who has if you're going through anything, you can say, you know what? He has shown me. It's extravagant mercy. For his fountain of mercy has given us new life. We are reborn to experience a living, energetic hope through the resurrection of Jesus Christ from the dead. That one thing that happened gives us so much hope, right? They were in debates, the Pharisees and the Sadducees and the religious leaders of Jesus' time. Some believed in the resurrection, some didn't. So if you see that there was a debate in there, they weren't really sure what was going to happen. But Jesus, as he came along and he was resurrected from the dead, it gives us concrete assurance of where we're going. He is the firstborn of creation. He's the first to be resurrected, and we're going to follow suit. Isn't that? It gives us so much hope. We are reborn into a perfect inheritance that can never perish, never be defiled, and never diminish. It is promised and preserved forever in the heavenly realm for you. This perspective I'm talking about today, listen, I'm not here to entertain you today. I really want to change your mind. Amen. I want you to see how the early church did things, and I want you to change your mind. Their hope was in something after death. They had an inheritance that could never spoil, fade, rot, or be stolen or defiled. That's what they hoped in. This life was a temporary life that they used to serve the Lord. And they were looking forward to something great. Not in this world, but after death. And our hope is in something other than this life, other than our temporary bodies. Our victory is found in how we respond to life. Are we going to sit and wallow in the things that we lose on this earth? Or are we going to be like, that's okay. That's okay. I'm looking forward to heaven. As a church who we believe in healing and miracles, and we see miracles, and we have testimonies of miracles every week. We cannot adopt a save me mentality in that culture. Does that make sense? I mean, when one of our kids has a cold in the home, we're praying. We're believing God, that God's going to heal them. Totally. But we can't have a save me mentality, or we're going to get rebuked like Peter was. When Jesus said, get behind me. Because Peter was like, no way, you'll never be killed. You'll never die. And Jesus is like, you have no idea. I'm here to die. That's what I'm here for. Colossians 3:1-2 says, Christ's resurrection is your resurrection too. Amen. This is why we are to yearn for all that is above. Do you know what that feels like? Have you been in seasons of your life where you just yearn for the things above? And then have you been in seasons of your life where you're just so inundated with work and busy that you're so focused on this life, you kind of forget. You're like, I remember something, about heaven, I got to be reminded. I'm kind of losing it here. We've seen and we've felt the difference of both. And God's calling us to have our minds set on things above, to yearn for all that is above. For that's where Christ sits, enthroned at the place of all power, honor, and authority. Amen. Yes, feast on all the treasures of the heavenly realm. Feast on all the treasures of the heavenly realm, and fill your thoughts with heavenly realities, and not with the distractions of the natural realm. That is a good word for us. Amen. The resurrection life is one that is consumed with the hope of heaven. That's the resurrection life. When you're consumed with the hope of heaven, it fills your thoughts. And when things happen on the earth, they don't faze you. You're like, I know where I'm going. And I'm going to have a new hip in heaven. You're going to see me running around. There's Joe running again because I didn't get to do it here. There's he's running again. What's he doing? I mean, running and shouting. I did a funeral yesterday. I don't know if you guys remember Frances Lynch. She was a part of our body, 101 years old. It was an amazing funeral. I mean, this lady was so amazing and godly, and she just lived her whole life just serving the Lord. And they would be asking her, if she's scared of, dying as she's getting older. She's like, no, I'm ready. I am so ready to go. They said just 2 years ago, she was still doing somersaults. And she was so joyful. They had a women's prayer time, I think for like 30 years back in this room over here. And sometimes they would invite me. They want to pray for me. So I would go and spend time with them. And she would just have so many hymns memorized. And she would just lead in song. And it was just joyful. And then every time after church, I would say hi to her, greet her like I would greet everyone else. And she would always give me a hard time. She would tease me about something, just so full of joy, this woman. I want to end up like her. She was faithful to the end. She lived for heaven. All the testimonies of all her family were so amazing of how she poured into people's lives and just said, remember Jesus, remember Jesus. And I even talked to Elizabeth Cochran this past week, who's a missionary in India with some family that we support. She's been there, her and her husband, kids, they've been there for 30 years. They have over 2,000 staff, Indian staff now. And so she remembers Frances being her children's church teacher here. And Frances taught them about missionaries. I mean, just a legacy of one person living for Jesus. But I could just imagine if she could talk to us right now, if we could hear her right now, because it becomes real when you know someone who passes away. It becomes real. All the stuff that we read and learn. We talk about heaven, we talk about eternity, but when we know someone close to us that passes over and we here are saying goodbye, there is a company of people that are saying hello to her. And she's still alive. She's somewhere, It makes it all so real. But I could imagine if she could talk to us today, she would probably say, it is so gorgeous here. She would probably say, God is better than I realized. I could imagine her saying to us, remember Jesus, he's real. Hold on to Jesus. He's all worth it. He's worth your whole life. We need to be content, be thankful for what we have, but put our hope in the resurrection. That's the right perspective. That's the victorious perspective to have. How do we do that? Well, there's no resurrection without the crucifixion. We know that, right? And to live the resurrected life, there has to take place a death in your own heart. Jesus said in John 12:24 and through 26, he said, let me make this clear. A single grain of wheat will never be more than a single grain of wheat unless it drops into the ground and dies. Because then it sprouts and produces a great harvest of wheat, all because one grain died. The person who loves his life and pampers himself will miss true life. Wow. The world system will not fulfill you. It promises you so much, but it will not fulfill you. The enemy cannot be good on his promises. He's a liar. That's crazy. If you pamper yourself, you will miss true life. But the one who detaches his life from this world and abandons himself to me will find true life and enjoy it forever If you want to be my disciple, follow me, and you will go where I am going. And if you truly follow me as my disciple, the Father will shower his favor upon your life. I know we all want that. But we need to lose our life to find it. And finding your life is not the goal, you see? It's a byproduct of losing your life. You say, you know what? I am going to just spend my life on Jesus. He's worth it. I'm going to waste my life on serving him. All he needs is one grain of wheat who's willing to die. And he can do so much with that one. Philippians 3:10 and 11 says, and I continually, this is Paul, I continually long to know the wonders of Jesus more fully and to experience the overflowing power of his resurrection working in me. I will be one with him in his sufferings, and I will be one with him in his death. Only then will I be able to experience complete oneness with him in his resurrection. He knew that so well, to experience the sufferings with Jesus. They actually celebrated when they were persecuted in the book of Acts. Remember reading that? They were celebrating. Oh, we were persecuted. We were thrown in jail. We were beaten. Oh, we are worthy to suffer with Jesus. It's such a different perspective than we're used to. But such an amazing perspective. See, whenever you experience a death in an area of your life, God is working to birth something in another area. You may be watching something die, and you may be trying to hold on to that thing. You may be trying to resurrect it. You may be praying and fasting. And God's like, no, don't look there. I got something going on over here. You see, he's so good, guys. He's so good. He will never leave you wanting. This isn't just positive thinking. You know that. This kind of faith rests on who God is and who God was. When we read the word and we see how God pulled people through, we see how God orchestrated people's lives, we can trust in a God like that. In fact, he is so trustworthy that the safest place to be is to hand your life over to him. Amen. That's the safest place to be because he's so good. He's so good. He knows what I need better than I do. And sometimes we call prayer, telling God how to manage our lives. And sometimes we just need to go, you know what? You take over. You take over, and I'm going to watch how you bless me, how you redeem what's going on right now. Because I know you. You didn't leave people. You didn't leave Joseph in the pit. You didn't leave him in jail. You didn't leave David in the cave. You didn't leave Moses out there wandering. You rescued people. That's who you were, and that's who you are. And so when things are hard, you trust in who God was. You study who God was and say, that's the God that's in charge of my life as well. He's a great organizer, administrator. He will plan your life out perfectly. Will there be hardships? Yeah. Difficulties? Yeah. He warned us that there will be. So we can't be shocked when there are. What happened to God? Where is he? No. Jesus said, you will have tribulations. You will have trouble in this life. So when you have trouble, don't be shocked. Just be like, oh, but Jesus overcame the world. I'm going to trust you. I'm going to trust you. And when you are in a painful season, remember that resurrection life is coming. Remember that it may not be in this life. We pray for miracles, but we have this unshakable hope that we will be with him for all of eternity. That cannot perish or fade or be stolen or taken from us at all. And that is where our hope lies. And remember, for in the kingdom, life is born out of death. If you don't see life coming from your sufferings, you may be looking in the wrong place. God is building something in you that's timeless. The resurrection life, the victorious life, may not be what you see on the outside. It may not be your health. It may not be your finances. It may be that quality that God is building in you that is so priceless to him. He says your faith is worth way more than gold. So what is God focused on? Oh, I'm not going to have enough money this month, or my car broke down. Is God like, oh no, what am I going to do? I missed that one. No, he's like, I'm making something in you that is going to blow your mind. Much better than that Porsche that you want. There are rewards that you will receive in heaven because of what you endured. And you're going to be there a lot longer than you are here. James says your life is like a vapor. You know when you get a cup of coffee and you have that little smoke, that's a vapor. He says, here today, gone tomorrow. That's what life is compared to eternity. If you today just switch something in your brain and say, you know what? I understand. I'm not going to be fulfilled by this world. I'm going to live for Jesus. And in fact, I may not be fulfilled in this life. That's okay. I'm going to live for Jesus. In heaven, you will thank me. Really, you'll be like, thank you for that sermon. I lived that the rest of my life, and I never regretted it. And in fact, in heaven right now, with the rewards that I'm reaping, I would have done more. There are rewards you will receive in heaven because of what you've endured here on earth. Is that not enough? When I say that, do you get excited? Because that's a little bit of a test. Where are you looking for that fulfillment? Where are you looking for those blessings, those rewards? Because in heaven, you will get rewards for what you did on earth and what you endured and how you responded. Our hope is in heaven. Our hope is in him who was raised from the dead and defeated death itself. That is our hope. We can look forward and say our biggest enemy was death and the grave, and Jesus defeated those. We will be with him for all of eternity. Amen? God, we just pray. Why don't we stand? God, we just pray that this truth, these truths, this hope would be so cemented in us. I pray that it would be cemented in me. And as James says in the book of James, consider it joy when you go through trials. That just seems so foreign to us, Lord, but I pray that you would give us a revelation in the midst of trials that says, you know what? I am joyful right now because I have a hope that's unshakable. I have an eternal hope. I know where I'm going because Jesus was raised from the dead and is no longer in the grave. I have a hope that I'm going to be with him. And that hope should really overshadow every other smaller hope in this world. We all have hopes in this world, but that hope should overshadow all other hopes. So God, I pray that our hearts would just be changed today. Because many of us in this room, God, including myself, have gone after things of the world thinking that they would satisfy. It literally doesn't work. It doesn't work. And so we go after you today, God. We go after you today. We agree, we choose to agree with your scriptures. And we're going to, yes, love our enemies, love others, spend our lives others focused like you were, Jesus. Even the enemy who betrayed you, Judas, you washed his feet. We want to align ourselves with you, with your word, and be little Christs, Christians, little Christs, that we would look like you, talk like you, act like you. And when we experience suffering or death of any kind, that we would understand that resurrection is coming. You don't leave us in the pit. You don't leave us in jail. You don't leave us hiding in the cave. You restore our lives, God. That's who you are. And we praise you and we thank you for that. In Jesus' name. Let's worship.